short of something dramatic happening in the weather. And the Italians are pretty good at predicting things. And at the moment, it looks to be calm at Imola. And short, of course, of anything dramatic happening on track, it's going to be another McLaren-Mercedes 1-2 at Imola. Totally dominant on Friday. No sprint race this weekend. So it was just free practice 1, free practice 2, just like the good old days. McLaren 1-2 in both of those. Oscar Piastri just ahead of Lando Norris, but don't read too much into that. Lando was really, really quick on his second run on the soft tyre in the second session in sector 2, dramatically fast through turn 9, the left-hander at the top of the hill after the Tosa hairpin. I spoke about that in the live stream, probably the best corner in my opinion. Left-hander where not much happens in terms of off-track drama. Let's hope that continues. But it's a quick corner, fifth gear corner, and Lando really good there, but then backed off in sector 3. So don't read too much into those lap times. I'm not saying Oscar Piastri wasn't brilliant today. He was totally in command every time he was on track, whether it was mediums or on the soft. But Lando looking very, very good. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the pole tomorrow based on what he can do through that left-hander, which basically adds up to sector 2 at Imola. So McLaren very, very quick on the new soft tyre that Pirelli have brought to the track for the first time. All the teams trying the new C6, as they call it, for the first time. Good tyre, very, very good soft tyre, lots of grip, seems to last for the entire lap, and there seems to be a second lap you can get out of it if you do a nice cool down lap between the two. And a lot of them ran it for quite long runs anyway. So yeah, looking good. I think the race tyres will probably be medium and then hard, but nonetheless, soft tyre looking a big improvement for Pirelli. But probably a one-stop strategy. Getting ahead of myself a little bit. One-stop strategy here. Very, very long pit lane. 27 seconds lost in a pit stop here. So unlikely, unless you're at the back of the grid and you're trying something a bit clever. So to some extent, the interest is who will be P3 for that third podium position, assuming both McLarens finish the race, which seems as if they will. Very close between Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Alpine just nibbling around as well, plus Williams, Mercedes. So at the moment, the honour is with Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. Amazing after all the stuff that's been going on at Alpine, the resignation of Ollie Oakes and disappearing to Dubai from Miami and the arrest of his brother and Jack Doohan being replaced by Franco Colapinto for the next, well, this race and the next 4. Lots going on, but the Alpine surprisingly good around Imola. Gasly and Colapinto starting on the medium tyre and everybody else is on the soft and going very well on the medium, like on the 10th or 11th lap. He was right up there with the best of the soft tyre runners, including McLaren in FP1. And FP2, when he put the soft tyres on, Pierre Gasly third quickest. A few things to report from the track today. One was very impressed with George Russell today in FP1 when he was getting messages back to the pits about how low the sister car of Kimi Antonelli was running and reporting on what the plank was doing and so forth. Very nice to see that. But that's a function, of course, of having a really well-balanced team, by which I mean that George Russell, the experienced super quick, number one, if you like, Kimi Antonelli, the young pretender. No one would ever imagine that he would be up there, equal status with George. And because of that, it's a well-balanced team. Because of that, George has no compunction at all. But you can't imagine Lewis saying that about Charles' car, or indeed Oscar Piastri probably saying about Lando Norris's car now. So that's just a little cameo right now of how well-balanced the driver lineup is at Mercedes. Lots of respect, of course, for Antonelli, who didn't actually go very well on the soft tyre today. He was pretty good sectors 1 and 2 and then had a bit of a moment sector 3. That's why he doesn't appear too high in the results from practice today, but he was quick in sectors 1 and 2, so he'll be right there tomorrow, assuming he can stitch the lap together. Gabriel Bortoleto had a shunt in FP1, went off at Ravazza head-on into the Tech Pro barrier. No real drama there. Another one for Isaac Hadjar in FP2. This was a bigger one when he went off at Tamburello, basically, where poor Ayrton had his accident in '94. Very, very different now, of course. There's a chicane there, and the Tech Pro barrier did their job as well as he spun round to the outside. That brought FP2 to a premature halt, but by then most of the running had been done, so it wasn't a big interruption at all. So let's have a look at the Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari battle on fuel on the long runs today. If you look at what Oscar Piastri is doing, 21.0, 20.9, and then Charles Leclerc's doing a 19.9, you've got to assume that Charles wasn't running full load of fuel there. Even so, not a bad run by him. Not as many laps as the others, but no dig on the tyre at all. And not too bad, 20.0, 20.3. But again, we don't know how much fuel he was running. We just assume he was running lighter because obviously Oscar Piastri is the baseline there. So Oscar's quickest lap was a 20.3. George Russell did a 20.3, 20.3, 22.2, 23.3, 20.2. Max has run pretty representative of where they are relative to McLaren, I think, just a shade slower. And it showed on track. He came out, when they started their long runs, he came out ahead of Oscar and Lando. They're about a corner apart. And after about 4 laps, already Oscar was passed, and then Lando got him as well. Would have been interesting moments for the McLaren drivers passing the Red Bull like that. And equally, I'm sure for Max, it was quite a good thing in a way, just to show everybody on the pit wall where Red Bull are relative to McLaren. McLaren just in another class. He couldn't get anywhere near them. So looking at those, it's going to be pretty close, I think, between George Russell and Max Verstappen, Mercedes versus Red Bull. Let's have a look at the speed trap now. Again, I've based this on, I've broken this down to the performance of the cars so we can get more of a feel for where the various chassis are. This is the speed trap just before Ravazza, which is the left-hander at the bottom of the hill. So it's quite a longish straight. It's not actually that straight, but it's flat out and it's downhill. Maybe that's one of the reasons the McLaren-Mercedes is suddenly quite quick in a straight line. Oh, it's downhill now. But going into, it's 120 meters before Ravazza, that left-hander. It's a double apex left-hander. So Williams, Mercedes, again quickest, back to where they used to be most of last year, 300. Alpine really quick. That's a bit of a worry in terms of everyone that needs to beat Alpine tomorrow, the group we've just been talking about. Red Bull kind of up there as well. Ferrari not slow. So let's have a look. McLaren, this is very bad news for everybody else. Is McLaren actually not that slow in a straight line at Imola, 296. So yeah, they can live with that. They'll be up front anyway, and if they're not, they'll have the DRS to help them, and then they've got the lap in which to pull away from the opposition. So yeah, that is quite bad news for everybody else, I think, how relatively quick McLaren Mercedes are, because we're used to seeing them near the bottom of the speed trap at the other circuits we've been to this year. Mercedes, on the other hand, quite slow in a straight line, presumably running a little bit more downforce to get the car to work around here, and looking for tyre management on that. Racing Bulls 295, and slowest of all in a straight line, again, Aston Martin, looking quite difficult in terms of their weekend ahead. Going back to turn 9, which is the left-hander at the top of the hill, one of my favourite corners, actually. It's a lovely corner. They're not very good TV angles as they go in there. The cameras, it follows the car head on, and they're flat out in 7th gear, or accelerating up to 7th gear. And then a camera view they show is from the rear, and you see them sort of doing that. So you have no feel. Well, I can't get much feel for what they're actually doing in terms of positioning the car. But in terms of what they're doing with the throttle and the brakes and looking at the telemetry, Lando Norris through there, I've got to say, absolutely superb. He comes out of the throttle. This is lap after lap when he's got fuel in the car on the long run. He's coming out of the throttle long before he even touches the brakes. I was having a discussion with yet another race engineer about this the other day, and they're saying, oh no, it's absolutely impossible. No way a racing driver would ever do that. Well, he is doing it, and you can see it on the telemetry. He's coming out of the throttle in 7th, he's letting the car settle, and then he's braking 6th. And then he's letting the car, once he's in 5th, he lets the car settle again. He's probably going a little bit too quickly, letting the car scrub off its own speed, and then just finding the perfect moment. His throttle application is beautifully linear as well, coming out of turn 9. So of all the drivers there today, I think Lando was asking least of the car going in to 9, and indeed in the middle and coming out of 9. Really, really good to watch. It was interesting to see Max and George Russell through that corner as well, turn 9, because I suppose, I don't know, it'd be 2 corners out of 5. They would go in flat out in 7th, and the first thing both of them would do is hit the brakes while they're still flat out. Left foot braking in the rally sense of the word, just to get the weight transfer such that they've got a front end that they can use going in. But in order to get the front to work, they've got to do a little bit of left foot braking. Obviously, they all brake with a left foot, but in this case, they're braking against throttle. That's what I mean, sort of Michael Schumacher style. And they're doing that to get that weight transfer for the front to work. McLaren drivers never, ever need to do that. Oscar Piastri, slightly different. There are no moments when Oscar, in terms of going into the corner, there are no moments when he's not on either full throttle or heavy braking. No overlap, absolutely beautiful coordination, but unlike Lando, he's not coming out of the throttle and then braking. And that's what he was doing so well in Saudi Arabia, interestingly enough. But through turn 9, I would give 10 out of 10 to Lando Norris on that corner. That's the only one I really studied today. And that's, to me, that's a really important corner because A, it's very quick, and B, there is a bit of a straight afterwards. Yeah, they go down to Acqua Minerale, and it's not that long, but it's a corner where you can lose quite a lot of time, particularly if you go in with understeer, and then it's a really bad corner. And Charles Leclerc, absolutely perfect as well in terms of his throttle. He was never overlapping, but there was never a moment when he could just let the car breathe. Everything was always brake or throttle, and the throttle application a little bit more circumspect. There were certain laps when he was giving it too much throttle and having to come out, something that the McLaren drivers never ever have to do because they've got so much feel for the surface of the road through the grip level they've got in that car. Lewis Hamilton, by contrast, braking against throttle, but not in a Max George Russell way, where you can see it's for weight transfer. It's just in a slightly messy way. And I did a short yesterday about Lewis unfollowing all his stuff on Instagram, and I thought, well, that's a step in the right direction. I wonder if we're going to see a change now in the way he's driving the car. And it was the same Lewis. It was the same Lewis we've seen all year on Friday at Imola. Maybe it's going to change tomorrow, but it was quite wide turning, very late braking, which is why I think he's in a straight line, which is why I think he's complaining so much about the brakes. Maybe there was something very specific about the car, but if you're going to brake like that late, that deep, you are always very prone to the brakes being imperfect. And that's not something he ever had at McLaren or at Mercedes, particularly at McLaren when he was on the Carbon Industries. And Fernando Alonso arrived with all that road dust, having used the Hitco brakes, which has the softer pedal feel. And Lewis was always able to massage the brakes more than Fernando. But that's kind of gone away now. It's another symptom of what we're seeing with Lewis. And quite a frustrating day for him, obviously, in front of the fans and so forth. But anyway, still got the weekend to come. And the Ferrari, ultimately in qualifying form, should be a quick car around here. It's quickish in a straight line. And on those new Pirelli C6s, assuming you can get a free lap and all 3 sessions, that car should be able to produce a pretty good lap time, I would have thought. Quite a lot of bouncing, quite a lot of bottoming today with the cars. But in general, a very, very close battle behind the McLarens, between 4 or 5 teams. And there'll be some close racing behind them as well. Oliver Berman, again, looked very good in the Hess Ferrari. But I think, again, I felt a bit sorry for Jack Doohan, very sorry for Jack Doohan, that on a day when the Alpine, or a weekend when the Alpine looks to be quite quick, he's not driving the car. I think he would have been quite quick in that car today. Anyway, we'll see how Colapinto goes over the weekend. So before we close, a quick word about the REC Lotus 98 Senna watch. Beautifully crafted by REC, using components from that car. Can be ordered with a special discount. Just use the word Peter when you're ordering it, and details in the description below this video. So big thanks to REC watchers, to Jetcraft, to OEM Exclusive, and to TrackNinja for their support of this channel. Thanks for watching. We'll be back again with qualifying from Imola tomorrow.